So, we all saw what happened this weekend, and I feel like an open discussion needs to be had about it. As we all know, the grand finals of Smash 4 took place a few days ago, August the 4th, 2018, and most of us are very familiar with what happened overall. I would normally do a good bit of editing, I'd probably write a comprehensive script, and I'd probably go into that would go into my own thoughts and feelings on this. But honestly, Smash is just a very dear game to me. I not only grew up with this series as a child, but it's also a very integral part of my life right now, even at adulthood. For this reason, I feel like it's best to just go into this blind, with nothing more than a few bullet points, just to make sure I cover all the main topics. So I'm sorry if I'm stumbling or rambling for too long. I'll try and keep myself as concise and meaningful as possible. And don't worry about any long pauses. I'm going to be taking my time to make sure that I don't say anything that sounds mean or offensive out of, if taken out of context. I don't want to be hateful in this video, but we need to address some very valid concerns that have happened throughout Smash 4's history, so that we do not make the same mistakes with Ultimate. It's important to mention that I feel that this was not just an issue about a toxic community reaction to a Bayo v Bayo ditto at the end. This is more multi-layered than that, I feel, and I feel that most people will only look at one aspect of this controversy that's literally happened a few days ago. I'm going to try and look at every aspect of what happened, and talk about what happened objectively and subjectively if I can help it, and give my personal opinions. I mean, this is very much just my personal opinions on what's happened. If you want something objective, I imagine that something will come out eventually from someone else who's going to make videos on this. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jonas, and I've been playing Smash 4 competitively since around late 2015 as a Yoshi main. I've been playing at a local level for most of the time up until about 2017 when I started competing at the national level more. I'm also a past tournament organizer for my local scene as well. I know I'm by no means the greatest player here, but I'm decent enough, but that's not really important here. So we're going to talk about the main elephant in the room, which would be Bayonetta as a character. She was first introduced to Smash 4's DLC in February. She's been infamous for being absurdly powerful and being leagues above every other character in Smash 4, to be honest. When she was introduced, I personally felt that the meta was quite healthy and diverse personally. I mean, there was the odd Sonic Ditto, and lots of people complained about pre-patch Diddy and Sheik, along with a few other characters like Rosalina. But I would say that most of the characters, well, not most, but about half of the characters were probably really viable. I would say the top 15 characters were incredibly abundant every way, and I would argue that probably the top 30 characters were tournament viable at least like a national level. I mean, that diversity immediately shrank when Bayonetta was introduced to Smash though, and the rapid but sure over-centralization of top players picking her over their past mains was only inevitable. I mean, Abadango did that literally, it must have been a few months ago when he swapped from Mewtwo to Bayonetta, and Mewtwo is a top tier himself. There's been constant arguments about the possibility of banning her, or I should say there were constant arguments. The majority of people were on the anti-Bayo side, let's not kid ourselves there, and it's really not hard to see why. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I've wanted her banned since probably late 2017, after all the patching and all the updates were done. It was pretty clear as day that she was a problem character since she was ever released, and I've wished sometimes that we were just more open to drastic change as a community. There's a great Reddit post that I read earlier on today by the user Big4Lil, BIG for LIL. And I'm only going to go into like the main points of the post, but I will link the post in the description, so please read the entire thing for yourself if you want something that's really in depth about why Bayo is broken. But essentially, the reason why she was broken is just due to her absurd tools and moveset, and she's practically the only character in the game that is capable of ignoring the neutral entirely, which is probably the most fundamental and definitely the most exciting part of Smash Bros. As a whole, regardless of any specific game. It wouldn't have mattered if she was top tier, top 5, top 20, top 30, it wouldn't have mattered. A character that can just simply ignore how the game is played just simply degrades the game over time, and anyone who isn't a top player is going to suffer for it, really. No character should ever have their essential bread and butter tools be inefficient and meaningless in a matchup against that character, and better yet, no character should be punished for using their bread and butters. Bayonetta also has, I mean, this isn't a surprise, but Bayonetta also has access to things that other characters typically don't have. We all know that. There's a glitch where she can jump 3 times, and combining that with side B and up B gives her an absurd recovery. The best in the game, and it's the best in the game because of just her hitboxes during it. It's one of the few recoveries which just can't be edge guarded by any of the cast, really. Otherwise, you have Bat Within, which is at worst a frame 1A dodge, and she can escape practically every combo that no one else in the game has the ability to do. And she has really fast, safe aerials that can be easily spammed, and they kill absurdly early. Like, up air kills at like 100 from the top. I've seen back air kill, with a bit of rage, I've seen back air kill at about 125, 130 in the center of Smashville. Then, you know, combined with the inherent auto-link and combo properties that her moves have, that allow her to kill at really low percents, and then you just have a character that poses a threat not to the game itself, but just on a fundamental level of game design. She should have belonged into a completely different fighting game. She should have been a Marvel character, or a Guilty Gear character, or she belongs in a fighting game that has actual combos and not in Smash Bros. Personally. And as a spectator, it's not really much better either, due to her lacking in neutral. Big Full Ill says that she basically just plays the same against every character in the game, leaving two games feeling too samey across the board, which I think is true. I mean, spectators, I'm not sure about you guys, but I get bored watching the same Bayonetta combos, killing everyone off the top at like 0% over and over again, and I imagine that's gotta be the case for most other people too. And it feels like every other character has to work so much harder just to get their stock confirmed in comparison to her. At this point, I don't know what I'm showing, but I'm most likely probably showing footage of EVO over this. But I remember the two biggest moments that stuck out to me were when Nitono completely outplayed Captain Zack, and I had to correctly predict which time and knee dodge, and that moment was completely hype because of just how outplayed he was. You could just feel the excitement and the energy in the crowd there. Only for I think it was Captain Zack to just literally drop down, fair, side B, up B, fair, and just kill at 0%. And all hype literally just died right there. You could hear the crowd booing back there as well. Zack literally only needed to connect a single fair hit to kill the Sheik, which wasn't... It's infuriating. It really is, just seeing Bayonettas killing so early and easily. It's not difficult holding the stick and pressing A and B buttons and then just reading where the DI is. It's really not that difficult. Every character needs to read DI in order to secure their final hits in a string during the advantage state. Why do people say that it's difficult reading DI for Bayonetta and that she has to read with DI? That's just so fundamental of being in the advantage state. It's not a difficult skill to learn. Like, as a Yoshi main myself, I have to literally contort my hands into shapes that shouldn't really be hands, to be honest, in order to just wave bounce to keep my neutral unpredictable. Because Yoshi's neutral is just so linear, really. It's just egg toss with nairs and a bit of angling, that's really about it. And I know that higher level players more than me probably do much more than that just as well. And I mean, I've been keeping my language kind of PG, but that set against MVD, again, the set with MVD against Mistake, it was just absolutely brutal. You can't deny it. You can't tell me with a straight face that witch time where she witch timed the banana, literally just the banana, you can't tell me that's acceptable. It's not. It really isn't. So, I mean, it's obvious. I mean, I told you this would be more of my opinions on the matter of everything, but you can see that I'm in the favour of Bayo being banned, and for quite a while at that. I feel that the Smash community has been ignorant, and I mean, these are strong words, but I feel that the community has been very ignorant and neglectful of the last time that something like this happened, being Brawl Meta Night. I mean, obviously, Bayonetta is not as bad as Meta Knight, but just because she's not as bad doesn't mean that she's like 5 leagues above every other character in the game. And I personally have my suspicions as to why Bayo was not banned, despite the majority of players and spectators giving valid criticisms and arguments as to why she should have been. I mean, it's all on Reddit, you can read it for yourself, but there are a few select TOs that were pretty much in favour of not banning her simply due to the fact that their friends were Bayonetta mains. And in turn they chose to neglect the common spectator and competitor rather than their few select friends. I know everyone's different, but in situations as those you need to make choices that have a bigger positive impact for the community. As a past TO myself, I've needed to make choices like that. I've had to choose choices that would screw over my friends if it meant that the local scene as a whole benefited more for it. And those choices have resulted in my past local scene thriving better than ever. Last year we were down to a very small number, now we're upwards to usually about 20, which obviously is super tiny compared to America and compared to the capital cities of the UK. But for the middle of nowhere, 20 people is quite a lot. It really is. And then obviously there's been other gaming groups in my past university that did the exact opposite of me, and they can't, well, I mean, that's not really about Smash, but what happened with those gaming groups pretty much is what's happening to Smash 4 right now. There's a famous Gabe Newell quote, which I don't remember exactly, but it went something along the lines of, "Never underestimate the communities and the players that dwell on your game. They can't read code, but players are sensitive to imbalance," something along the lines of like that. But basically, the quote essentially means that players are sensitive to imbalance. Players know when something is broken or overpowered. And if the majority feels that way, you should do something to change it, because if you don't, you're going to lose your player base, and that losing your player base is going to dispel the death of any game really that isn't a single player RPG or like a single player game. What's more important though is what specifically happened at EVO last weekend. This has rambled on, but everything I've said so far I feel is an important requisite for what I'm about to talk about now. Everyone who's watching this video is probably aware, but Lima and Captain Zack, in one sentence, had effectively showed zero sportsmanship during the grand finals, and this is really too important to not care about. This is important, and this affects everyone who cares about Smash on any sort of level, be it casual or competitive. It needs to be mentioned that as much as you may not like Lima and Captain Zack, it is completely unacceptable to send threats to them over the characters that they play, and even as people. Please do not threaten the two of them. At the end of the day, they were the final two people at EVO, and they deserve their spot there. But on the flip side to that, I feel it's perfectly acceptable to criticize the two of them for the type of people that they are, but more so especially for the actions that they chose to take during the grand finals. Personally, I'm not a big fan of Captain Zack or Lima. In fact, I would say that they're my two least favourite Smash 4 players in the US at this current time. Not just for their mains being Bayo, it's more for their obnoxious personalities. I can't stand that sort of behaviour in any sort of match, inside or outside. I like to be respectful and mature myself, and not everyone can be mature, you know. They are teenagers, but being teenagers is not an excuse. You're around adults, and I wasn't like that when I was their age. Rambling, moving on though. They constantly have just disrespect the majority of players and tourney events that they've partaken in, and EVO just so happens to be the first time where it was made really public for everyone to see, really. In essence, before the grand final started, roughly about half the people, yeah, it was about half, probably like 40, but no, it was about half. Half the people left the audience in a peaceful sort of protest, or just because they were bored of Bayo versus Bayo because it's boring to watch. I think it is, but that's not part of this video. While a majority, I think it was a majority of those who stayed, were consistently booing both Lima and Zack. A lot of people seem to have issues with the aspect of booing in competitive game. I personally disagree with it. If the audience is not happy with the current state of the game or sport as a whole, they will boo to vocally voice their concerns. It's the best, it's the most vocal and the most public way of voicing concerns over something. And the only reason they're booing now is because they weren't listened to a year ago. They really love Smash, but when things have been so stagnant and stale, and when a character is so fundamentally broken in terms of game design, obviously there's going to be people going to be booing towards the end of the game's life cycle. You know, it's been the case for centuries and even millennia. You know, negative stimuli, as much as people don't want to admit it or acknowledge it, negative stimuli, you know, negative responses, it's important for us to grow as a community. I mean, the crowd booed partly Lima for who they are as people, which isn't good, but most of the people probably booed at the fact that it was another Bayo versus Bayo ditto, and that's been a very consistent thing that's been happening at the local level, at the regional level. It's been happening way too much, really. People sometimes forget that competition lives and dies at the hands of the spectators, and having them boo at the character should be a healthy realization that something needed to change. During the grand finals, both Lima and Zack, Captain Zack, I'm going to be calling him Zack to make it easier for me, made a mockery of themselves. The EVO in its entirety, every single spectator, every single competitor, and the entire Smash scene as a whole, including Melee, 64, Brawl, just the entire Smash scene as a whole. I sincerely cannot describe how grave the consequences are probably going to be from this. The grand finalists had stalled and colluded for 2 entire minutes at one point, which is probably what you're watching now if I'm a smart boy and do, you know, the right bits of edits to showcase this. And I need to mention that most games typically last for about... I do need to mention that most games typically last for about 2.5 minutes, but the time starts at 6 minutes. So they effectively wasted a third of the entire match length, which is huge. Honestly, it's... I mean, thankfully, it's the grand finals, not pools or something. But, The players weren't taking the set seriously either, and they even went as far as to lose their own stocks on purpose if the other person were to have accidentally SD'd themselves. SDing being where you accidentally get yourself killed. I personally value competition. Competition's a very important thing for me, and as a man who values competition, the Grand Finals, it made me angry, to be honest. I don't usually get angry. You can ask anyone who knows me, and I'm the most chill dude you could ever meet, really. I'm angry at the TOs for not disqualifying the both of them on the spot after 2 minutes of stalling and colluding. Having gone to other competitive events for other games like Overwatch, Magic the Gathering, and sports such as table tennis when I was really young, people have been disqualified for much, much less, and to me, it feels like the Smash community has no respect for the rules that they've written for themselves, really. And it needs to be addressed. This is the biggest thing that I think needs to be addressed here. We need to follow the rules that we set for ourselves. We can't adjust it, or you know, cherry pick rules if it's popular players. We can't have it be that way. It doesn't set a good example for newer players who want to join us later on down the line. And I don't appreciate the sense of entitlement that is currently happening towards the people, towards the audience at EVO who did protest against it. Unlike a lot of competitive sports and games, Smash is completely driven by, you know, the passion and love that we have for it. It's not for the money. It's never been for the money for most of us. Most of us don't play or compete for money. We compete because we compete for the competition and for the good times and the good memories that we get from it. And to think that some people have the audacity to tell the audience that they shouldn't be allowed to leave and protest, despite telling the same people to do exactly that for the last 2 years, is absurd. I find it really absurd. There's been discussion about this controversy in my local scene, along with the UK scene as a whole, and obviously for most of the world when I'm mentioning this. I can't speak for anyone. I can only speak for myself. But from what I can see, it's definitely, the reaction to it is definitely against Lima and Zack, and I can't say I personally disagree. You can probably assume that from my opinion so far, but I'm very much angry about everything that's happened here. Lima and Zack, they treated this prestigious event, you know, not everyone gets to be the finalists, the grand finalists at EVO, for the entire world to see, and possibly part of the mainstream as well. And they just treated it like an absolute joke, and they were disrespectful to the players involved, and the spectators, and the tournament organisers there, and the people that are sponsoring and investing into the Smash scene. This is probably going to have huge repercussions for us. I'm very pessimistic, that's just me being British, I'm afraid, but I'm feeling like inevitably the mainstream media is going to be making articles and headlines to target and attack gaming as a whole. They do this pretty much every 3 months or so, it feels like. And this isn't the issue for me, really. Most people don't have faith in the government nowadays, you know. And having examples of this immaturity and childishness doesn't look good for gamers in general, really. More worryingly, however, I'm worried about the relationships that we've been slowly building up with both Nintendo and the FGC community. Our relationship with both of these both of these parties have been, well, they've been rocky at best over the last decade. But I felt like we were making good progress, you know, things were getting much better compared to the dark days of Smash. But it's like what we just done here is likely to just burn the bridge and cause distance between the three of us over again. I mean, why should think about it. Why should Nintendo invest in our competitive scenes after they've just watched what happened? Why should they make balance patches for why should they make balance patches for the way we, you know, considering the way the Grand Finals were run. Like, why should the FGC have Smash at EVO considering that they're likely to get so much negative press over this? I can't express how upset and angry and disappointed I am, being completely honest. I'm disappointed in the TOs for not following the rules and regulations on disqualifying players that specifically didn't follow the rules, despite knowing the rules. I'm angry at Lima and Zack for being so disrespectful towards everything that literally breathed that day, and for causing the entire controversy to have happened in the first place. I'd want to put the entire blame on them, but it really feels like two teenagers might have just ruined our relationships with the FGC and Nintendo for years to come. What can we learn from this? That's the question we need to ask. What can we learn from this mistake that just happened? It's important to learn from the mistakes that happen in life. I feel like we should take it slow. We're a young community, and we need time to mature and grow. But we need to start learning, or this community won't be around for much longer. I feel like a good place to start would be to be able to recognize if when a character is top tier, like 64 Pikachu or Melee Fox, compared to a character that literally takes away key elements from the game that every character should follow as per course, like Meta Knight from Brawl, Bayonetta. I'm sorry if it's been a bit rambly and incoherent, but I wanted to speak from the heart about this. I didn't want to read from a perfectly PG script. I wanted people to know how I feel about this, as some random nobody that is so passionate about this game and does everything he possibly can to contribute in some form of way. My impact on Smash isn't much. I've managed to save a little scene in West Wales, and that's about it. And you know, I've definitely made mistakes talking about things here, you know. What I've said here probably isn't, some of it might be factually incorrect, that's what I'm trying to say. And if it is, I'll be sure to correct it within the comments and the description. I don't expect everyone here to agree with me, but I hope that we as a Smash community can be civil and talk and discuss about what's happened in a mature way. Let's discuss what happened, and let's bring discussion with an open heart, but with a rational mind as well. Thank you for listening, I really appreciate it.